not knowing where your daughter is, this beautiful young woman, 33 years old, and she just vanishes.
I don't think it's a coincidence she went missing the same day that this People's Court episode aired.
You're practically sunburnt now from being out in the elements looking for her.
Somebody knows something.
We want to find Michelle.
This is questions about my daughter. Michelle is still missing.
Do you think we're close to an arrest?
Orlando, Florida, November 17th, 2011. Just days before Thanksgiving. Michelle Parker's fight with her ex-fiancé airs on TVs across the country.
And he shouldn't have put his hands on me, and he shouldn't have put his hands on me prior. He shouldn't have left me 3 or 4 times over the past year and a half that we've been together.
Her family wasn't prepared for what would happen later that day.
Michelle Parker is like a lot of women that you see around here in Orlando. She had these big dreams, she had these big plans, and she was making steps to make her dreams come true.
Michelle was just a hardworking single mother of 3. She had 2 jobs. She would bartend at night.
She also had a tanning business, which she advertised with decals on her Hummer. She was also going to cosmetology school. She wanted to make a better life for herself and also her 3 kids.
She worked hard. She loved her kids. She was an awesome mom. Those kids are so well taken care of.
If you look at her photos, you can tell that cosmetology was important to her. She was always made up.
These are photos of Michelle Parker from the Michelle Parker Missing Person Facebook page.
Always had her nails done, who always had her hair done right.
She was in school to get the license and the certification to one day work for her mother and the salon.
She's like a magnet. She just draws people in. She's a beautiful, beautiful person.
Michelle Parker turned heads, and she turned Dale Smith's head. And he was good looking, she was good looking.
Michelle Parker and Dale Smith had twins together and were even engaged at one point. Michelle was also taking care of her 11-year-old son from a previous relationship.
They met, they fell in love, and then the worst happened.
Michelle Parker and Dale Smith, her fiancé, they appeared on this episode of The People's Court.
It was one of those relationships that went sour, and it went south pretty quickly.
They were fighting over a $5,000 engagement ring. She threw the ring off a hotel balcony during an argument, and he was suing her to get some compensation for it.
He's just outside the door, maybe about a foot. And then he said that he wanted his ring. So I took it off, and I threw it at him.
Then when the engagement was over, he wanted the ring back, which of course he couldn't get, so he wanted the money that the ring was worth.
The judge on the People's Court decided to split the cost, so Michelle Parker would have to pay about $2,500 to cover half the cost of that very expensive diamond ring. The People's Court episode was filmed over the summer, but it didn't air until November, and the family didn't even know when it was airing. So really, it was a surprise to everyone that this episode was on TV.
Vaughn Parker, Michelle's mom, told me specifically that it was not likely Michelle's idea to go on that episode. She felt somewhat humiliated afterwards.
And Michelle's mom explained that for the first time to ABC News.
It was just so that she wouldn't have to pay for that engagement ring. She said, that was the most humiliating experience of my life. I don't even ever want to see it.
So this case might not have stood out, but then it did. Because the day it was airing is the day that Michelle Parker disappeared. So it was November 17th, 2011. And the People's Court was going to air at 2 o'clock local time in Orlando. But Michelle Parker was out and about, and the last time she was seen was at 2:30 at her mom's salon. So it doesn't look like she actually watched the show.
And then that's the last time the mother would see her.
So at 3:30 that afternoon, Michelle's 11-year-old son gets home from school, and normally Michelle was there, but she wasn't at the house. So he did what he knew to do, which was to call his grandmother and say, hey, where's my mom?
Michelle's mom told ABC News about her grandson's concern.
Her son called and said, is Mom at the salon? We're like, no, honey, she should be taking a nap. She goes, well, I haven't seen her since I got home from school.
It was really out of the routine.
So at 4:26 that afternoon, Michelle's brother texts her to say, where are you?
Michelle's brother gets this odd, cryptic text from her with one word, just one word, Waterford.
Now, that could be a reference to Waterford Lakes, which is a large neighborhood.
Waterford Lakes is an area of Orlando that has a big shopping center, has a movie theater, has restaurants. So when you say Waterford here in Orlando, everybody thinks of that shopping center.
It's about 30 minutes from where Michelle's home was, which is just bizarre because she was not known to hang out near Waterford.
Now, exactly what she meant by it, did she send that text? All these are unanswered questions.
And even more odd is that Michelle's family said it wasn't like her to send a one-word text.
She was more expressive. She would tell you what she's doing. So it does seem strange that the last text that she sent was just a one-word thing. Michelle was a bartender at a place called The Barn, which is a really busy, popular country western bar. And she was supposed to work at 7:30, but she never showed up.
All day long, Michelle Parker keeps missing these appointments.
By now, the family was really concerned. So Michelle's sister called the cops and reported her missing.
Normally, you have to wait about 24 hours before the police start looking into a missing persons case. And her sister felt strongly enough that the police needed to be investigating immediately.
Now it's 8 o'clock, she's still not around. A few minutes later, her phone is powered off. There's no explanation as to why she would ever do that.
The battery could have run out, it could have been destroyed, no one knows.
Her cell phone was powered down in kind of a central location that wasn't really near her house, near her work, near any place that she'd been.
This is the cell phone tower where Michelle's phone last pinged. Even in a voicemail to her father a day before she disappeared, Michelle appeared to be fine. Her father shared the message exclusively with the Today Show.
Hey, Dad. This is Michelle. Call me when you have lunch or you have break or at the end of your day, okay? I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
She was in good tone and glad to see us, and we were going to go eat some oysters, but she didn't even tell me about the show was going to be aired.
For her to go missing on the very day that she was going to be on the People's Court and make her national TV debut, that would be quite a coincidence for her to vanish on that day. And it really feels like somebody must have known that this was coming. Because why this day? Why not the day before or the day after?
Michelle's family was very concerned, and it was evident in her interview with the Today Show.
The first time in my life, I have been climbing under trains. I have been going through ditches and dumpsters, praying that she's not there.
The family wasn't wasting any time. They knew that when Michelle Parker was missing for just a few hours that something may be wrong. So they went to the police right away, and they really went to work quickly trying to launch search parties, calling friends and putting up flyers.
My wife's out there, everybody's searching, and let's hope we find her and bring her home.
There were literally thousands of flyers. These were posted everywhere. She basically became a household name here in the Central Florida area.
Michelle vanished right near Thanksgiving. So instead of celebrating, her family was having to deal with these searches. And when I would talk to Michelle's mother, Yvonne, they were terrified.
This isn't a wallet. This isn't just a purse. This is my baby girl. We need to find her and we need help.
They were dredging lakes. They were looking under bushes. They were looking for a body. And that's the worst thing that a mother can go through.
I'm scared. I'm shaken. I want to find Michelle alive, not dead.
There were a lot of questions about what could have happened. You know, Michelle's mother actually said maybe it was a carjacking.
Michelle's mom explained that theory on the Today Show and appealed to her abductor.
I know in my heart of heart that she's been carjacked, that the people saw an expensive car and a girl who looks like she has money. And I know they've made a mistake.
She had a very distinctive big car. It was a Hummer. Her logo splashed across the back windshield of Glow. That was advertising her tanning business.
There were local TV anchors that were questioning, could she have just run off?
There was speculation that maybe she was seeing someone else and they had run off together.
Michelle Parker started dating someone just a few weeks before her disappearance. This boyfriend, Nathan Mitchell, was really new to the whole Parker family.
He was even seen looking for her. He would be crying. He was on the news. He was desperate to get her back as well. Police soon determined that Nathan Mitchell wasn't involved with her disappearance.
Michelle worked at one of the most popular bars in Sanford, Florida. It's called The Barn. People get weird infatuations with bartenders oftentimes. So there was speculation that maybe there was a patron at that bar who followed her, who was stalking her, who could have possibly kidnapped her. No one knows.
But there was somewhere else Michelle went that caught investigators' attention. Up next, investigators make a big discovery. And
New video of Michelle Parker just hours before she goes missing.
video reveals a disturbing clue.
Michelle Parker, a beautiful mom of three, vanishes on the very day that the People's Court airs that shows her and her ex-fiancé fighting over a ring.
These are photos of Michelle Parker from the Michelle Parker Missing Person Facebook page.
Police, family members don't know where she is, and attention is pointing to a lot of people who may be responsible.
Here's what we know. Michelle was last seen at 2:30 at her mom's salon. At 3:30, Michelle wasn't home when her 11-year-old son arrived after school. At 4:26, Michelle's brother received a text from her with one word, Waterford. And at 7:30, Michelle missed her bartending shift. But there was somewhere else Michelle went that caught investigators' attention. This is the police report Orlando Police Department provided us. Much of it has been redacted, but the report lists her last known location as her ex-fiancé Dale Smith's house.
At 3:18 p.m., her Hummer was seen going into Dale Smith's condo community. There were surveillance videos everywhere, so we do have a little clip of her parking her car there at his house.
We know that she dropped the twins off at that house, but what happened after is unknown. We don't really see her Hummer leaving his community because of the way the cameras are set up, so it does leave some mystery about when she may have left that neighborhood.
The way that neighborhood works is, because a lot of people have asked, why don't they have video of the vehicle leaving if it came in? Well, it's a loop around. So when you drive in, you would drive up to the house, and then it just loops back around to leave out of the gate. So that's why the vehicle is actually not seen leaving, because normally she just went around the loop.
There's so many cameras and so much surveillance in this neighborhood. So it's really strange that all we see is this few-second clip of her vehicle. There may be more. The cops may have it. They may not have released it.
In the first days of the search, you really didn't see much of Dale Smith because he was home taking care of the couple's twins and her other 11-year-old child. So he was not out as much going through the community, putting up flyers or wearing the T-shirts trying to find her.
And Michelle's mom defended Dale Smith on Good Morning America, saying he was cooperating with authorities.
The police have investigated, they've talked to him, they've searched everything he owns, he's let them in his home, they have his computers. He's with my twin babies right now, my grandbabies and his children, which is where he needs to be. He is crying every time I talk to him on the phone.
They took his cell phones and his computers, and he was a victim as much as everybody else.
The only thing we've heard from Smith's family is on the first day of the search, when his dad vouched for his son.
He ain't got nothing to do with that. He's got proof. He was here the whole time she was supposed to be gone.
Then investigators make a big discovery.
That distinctive Hummer that Michelle Parker drove was found the day after she was reported missing. It was found the other side of town, not really near where she lived.
Michelle's Hummer was found in the parking lot of the Walden Palms apartments.
The apartment complex wasn't the type of place where you would expect to see a Hummer. You know, it's kind of run down, it's in a rougher area. Nobody thought that Michelle had any business over on that side of town.
On that Hummer, for years, there was a decal that basically was promoting that tanning business.
The decal, and it said Glow, also would have had her phone number on it. That was gone. So it was strange. It looked like somebody had tried to make it a little bit less identifiable.
Her vehicle was found near a mall in basically South Orlando, which is obviously a county away. We're talking 20, 25 miles away. And that was just a miss.
If you look at a map where Michelle spent her time on her last day before she disappeared, she was zigzagging back and forth, which makes it really hard to understand exactly what she was doing or give us a place to look.
And there was something else that would add to the suspicion.
New video of Michelle Parker just hours before she goes missing.
At noon on the day that she disappeared, Michelle stopped at a KFC, and we have video of her making her order through the drive-thru, and it's the last known video that we have that actually shows her clearly. But it also shows a really interesting clue.
Now watch as the vehicle drives away. What do we see? Did you see that? The decals on the side of her truck, so distinct.
In the back of that Hummer, the decal that said Glow with her phone number was still there. So sometime between 12 o'clock and the time that the vehicle was found, that decal was peeled off. But it was definitely there when Michelle was driving.
Just because that vehicle has been found, we still want people to try to remember that Hummer. It had those glow stickers on there.
Well, removing the decal is really an obvious way to try to make sure this doesn't look like Michelle Parker's Hummer. It's a large, very big car, very flashy. You could recognize it going through the neighborhood. Then really taking this glow decal off the back was a way of trying to perhaps hide evidence.
This whole thing doesn't feel like a regular carjacking that happened at random. This feels like something targeted where they decided that they needed to cover their tracks by peeling that decal off.
I know that it had to have been someone that knew her personally, no doubt in my mind.
Inside the vehicle, they still found her purse, her wallet, her cash, her other belongings, which really led police to think this wasn't a carjacking.
But Michelle's iPhone wasn't found in her Hummer, and her family knew that may be the key to tracking her down.
We need that iPhone. Don't touch it. Just call us.
It's mainly black with a little bit of pink and white Hurley writing.
And what about that cryptic text Michelle's brother received from her number with one word? Waterford. Waterford was way on the other side of town from where Michelle's Hummer was found. Did she send the text? Or did someone else? Coming up, police make a stunning announcement.
There's all these microphones set out.
I knew something big was going to happen.
Best mom ever. I was real proud of her. I told her that a week before she went missing, how proud I am of her. She's done everything right.
Michelle Parker, a mom of 3 and a popular bartender, is on the People's Court battling her ex-fiancé Dale Smith over a luxury engagement ring. But the day the show aired would also be the same day she mysteriously vanished. Her family said there was no way she would just abandon her kids.
9 days after Michelle disappeared, and 2 days after Thanksgiving, the cops descended on Dale Smith's parents' home. And this wasn't just a little polite door knock. This was multiple vehicles, multiple officers, is that it was chaos.
Yesterday, as seen in the cell phone video, SWAT members raided Dale Smith Sr.'s Orange County home in the search for the missing mom.
We do know, according to some neighbors, that some chemical was used, whether it was a tear gas or a pepper spray. But police raided this home to try to seize evidence. They thought it was so important to do this over the Thanksgiving holiday.
We don't know what they were looking for or what they found.
Late today, a man believed to be the father of Michelle Parker's ex-fiancée refused to answer any questions.
Sir, can we talk to you for a moment? Can we talk to you about the raid here, sir?
They must have had a very good clue that Michelle was in there. Evidently she wasn't.
Then, 11 days after Michelle disappeared, there was a police press conference with Michelle's family.
There's all these microphones set out.
I knew something big was going to happen.
It's rainy, and it was sort of eerie.
After numerous tips and investigative leads, we are officially naming Dale Smith, the ex-fiancé as the primary suspect in the disappearance of Michelle Parker. Mr. Smith is our primary focus.
Dale, if you're out there, honey, and you're listening to me, if you made a mistake and it was just a second of like, oh, I lost my head or whatever, and you didn't know what to do, our family needs to have Michelle home.
It was surprising that they made such a declarative statement like that he was a suspect, but then they didn't arrest him. And it didn't really go anywhere from there.
Chief, is Dale Smith a murder suspect? We have a missing, beautiful young lady that we're trying to recover at this point.
It made everybody wonder, what evidence do they have? And is it not enough evidence for them to make an arrest?
Do you believe Dale Smith has lied to you?
We offered him a polygraph, and he simply refused.
We can only guess that Orlando police was trying to get a reaction out of Dale Smith.
Vaughn and Brad, Michelle's parents, they seemed like they knew this was going to happen.
You kept saying that, from the beginning, the whole family kept saying Dale's not a suspect.
He was cooperating. He was cooperating. That's why.
Are you frustrated that he has not been taken into custody or not charged?
I'm very frustrated.
After Dale Smith was named as the suspect, all hell broke loose.
Dale Smith, whom police say is their only suspect in the disappearance of his ex-fiancée Michelle Parker, lunged at a news photographer, knocking him to the ground. People who arrived with Smith could then be heard jeering the fallen photographer.
The Today Show was among a group of photographers that caught the incident on camera.
Authorities actually took his kids away, saying that they feared for the kids' safety.
I'm Mark Nejame from Nejame Law, and I was one of Dale Smith's lead attorneys. It's natural that he would be a suspect. Any spouse of a missing other spouse is going to be the first suspect. Some people saying, well, I think it was him. That's not enough. And this isn't even one of those cases where a slick defense lawyer spins something. There's nothing there. There was none of Dale Smith's DNA found anywhere that would connect him to Michelle Parker's disappearance.
Up next, detectives get a break that could crack the case wide open.
Our jaws dropped and our eyes got wide.
People out there in Orlando know where Michelle Parker is. And I just hope that they will tell us. Just call Crime Line. It's anonymous. Tell us where she is so we can go and get her.
Michelle Parker is a hardworking mother of three. She's got 2 jobs, going to school, trying to be a cosmetologist. Now her ex-fiancé is the prime suspect in her disappearance.
She was an amazing girl. Everybody loved her. She always have a big smile. Even if she have a bad day, she always was smiling.
Michelle Parker fights her ex-fiancé on the People's Court. But the same day the episode airs, she suddenly vanishes.
Are you looking at an arrest of Dale Smith?
We are still in the investigating stage.
About an hour and a half after that episode of the People's Court aired in Orlando, Michelle was at her fiancé, Dale Smith's house, dropping her twins off. And no one knows what went on when she was there.
All we're trying to do is connect the dots. And there's just a few more dots that we need to connect to resolve this.
Did you kill her? Do you have any idea where she is? Where's Michelle? Did you kill her? Where is she?
Does Dale Smith know where Michelle Parker is?
No, of course not.
What do you say to people who say that this is incredibly odd, that the same day that Michelle disappears, she's on the People's Court?
I would agree with them. It is odd. Those are the serendipitous things that happen in life. So it's wholly inappropriate that law enforcement should have, did fully, completely, and absolutely investigate him from top to bottom, and everybody and everything surrounding him. But they came up with nothing to tie him into it.
My frustration lies in the fact that I'm a mother. This is my firstborn child. And I don't know where she is. And I don't know who did it for sure. I don't know where they put her. How disrespectful that is. Man up. Do the right thing.
2 days after the state takes Dale Smith's twins away from him, he goes back to court.
The judge, to the surprise of everybody, gives him custody of the kids again. All of us were looking at each other in the media, just like, I can't believe he has these kids back. He had just been named a suspect. So for him to get his kids back, that was shocking.
It was an interesting hearing because right afterwards, it was Michelle Parker's mom, Yvonne, who went up and hugged Dale.
I hugged Dale to tell him that my grandbabies, I want to be able to see them. And I hope that, we can work something out because they're so important to me.
Smith's attorney says investigators interviewed the 3-year-old twins about the day their mom disappeared.
They talked actually to the children, who were very minor at the time, but there was simply a question without any adult being around. Did you hear them yelling? Did you hear was there any blood? Was there anything that anybody saw? And there was none of that.
Police didn't confirm if the children were interviewed. And while Dale Smith was granted custody of his children, his criminal past was also starting to surface.
Dale Smith had a record. He had been dishonorably discharged from the Marines. He had gotten into fights. He'd gotten charged with attempted aggravated battery. He had a drug charge.
In 2001, Dale Smith was court-martialed and convicted in a military court for domestic battery of his former wife. The Today Show spoke to her brother, whose pain is still evident.
The physical and mental abuse that he gave to her, she was pretty upset. She had never been treated like that by anyone.
He also had a restraining order that had been put out against him by Michelle. And the details were basically a yelling of obscenities. But one of the things he said, according to the paperwork, was, "Your day is coming." We don't know what that meant, but 2 years later, she disappeared and he was the suspect.
Now, the judge considered that request but dismissed it, saying there was insufficient evidence to issue a restraining order.
There was a pretty tumultuous relationship. Right before she went missing, they only spoke whenever they had to deal with the children. It was never good. It was always just like borderline walking on ice.
This is a man who had a record, and these kids were given back to him just 2 days later. Can you imagine?
I'm Rajan Joshi, one of the attorneys for Dale Smith. The Dale Smith you see on paper with the rap sheet is absolutely different than the Dale Smith who you'll see today. Dale Smith is honestly an amazing person. He cares for his kids like I have never seen a father care for his kids.
So then these pictures come out of Dale doing a hot body contest, and he's shirtless, he's wearing jeans, and he's wearing a cowboy hat. And it certainly gave this idea of the type of guy that everybody thought that he was.
Dale Smith and Michelle Parker met while Dale Smith was doing a hot body contest at this bar called Cowboys. From my understanding, Michelle liked the way Dale looked and had a mutual friend introduce the two of them. They hit it off right away. Like any relationship, they had their problems, but nothing out of the ordinary.
Then, a major development in the case.
You guys, this is a real hard day. They found my daughter's cell phone. It just breaks my heart that my daughter's cell phone was found, because that means that there's something criminal. It's something criminal. And I had such high hopes that, maybe, we'd find her and she'd be alive. And I just don't think that's gonna happen.
Nearly 3 weeks after Michelle disappeared, investigators find Michelle's cell phone in Lake Conway, near the Neela Avenue Bridge.
Maybe it was the bright pink case that she kept that phone in, the iPhone 4, but dive teams were able to find it.
Michelle's cell phone last pinged a mile away from where it was eventually found. Divers searching nearby bodies of water made the discovery.
But it was found in remarkably good condition, even though it was underwater. Think of all the things that are on a phone. Photos, your locations, your texts, your emails, your call history. So this is a treasure trove for the police. What's really interesting is the location where the phone was found. It's basically on the route from Dale Smith's home to his parents' home. And this isn't some major thoroughfare. This is kind of a back road.
Did Dale ever talk to you and tell you what happened the day that Michelle dropped the twins off?
The kids were dropped off. He had to work early, so he took the kids over to his parents' house.
The phone was found 5 miles from Dale Smith's parents' home, and near the cell phone tower that tracked Michelle's last ping.
The final text she sent said Waterford, which is a suburb in the complete opposite direction of where her phone was found.
Police said her phone was never in Waterford. They searched the towers. It was a decoy.
So we don't know if that was a red herring. We don't know if that was something that someone was trying to throw police off the trail or what.
Up next.
I know positively for sure that's a body. I have no doubt.
What clues are in the water? And a bombshell development in the case.
The perpetrator of this crime did not act alone. This was a two-person situation.
I miss her so much, and I want her home. She needs to be where she's supposed to be.
Michelle Parker, a beautiful mom of 3, vanishes after she appears on the People's Court, battling it out with her ex-fiancé over an engagement ring. But 11 days after Michelle disappears, cops were looking at Dale Smith.
We are officially naming Dale Smith, the ex-fiancé, as the primary suspect. There are no other suspects that I'm aware of.
We'll find Michelle. It's just a matter of time. And Dale can run, but he cannot hide.
This beautiful young woman, 33 years old, and she just vanishes. And the last person to see her, he has to know something.
Dale Smith did know that segment of People's Court was going to air. I would point out, though, he prevailed in that case. If it was Dale Smith, what did he do with the body if, in fact, he had killed her? There was no way he could have disposed of the body. The children were in the apartment. He didn't go anywhere.
I believe if he had nothing to hide, he would have taken a polygraph test. He would have been out here helping us find her.
Dale Smith's attorney claims his client did try to find Michelle.
He is specifically requesting and asking for a full-scale search team to come into Central Florida, headed by Tim Miller, the foremost searcher in the United States from Texas EquiSearch, to help find her. What guilty person would do such a thing? I've spoken to Tim Miller, my friend and former client, today. Without a body, any prosecution is going to be difficult.
We can't find Michelle's body to prove that she's deceased.
But this world-renowned search expert, who has found over 400 missing people and the remains of more than 250 others, has state-of-the-art equipment to find missing people.
I know positively for sure that's a body. My name's Tim Miller, founder and director of Texas EquiSearch.
After Michelle's phone was found in Lake Conway, speculation was mounting that Michelle could possibly be underwater. One of the tools investigators use in a case like this is a side-scan sonar.
We do this our training also as far as making a dummy, putting it in the water. Side-scan sonar works the same principles as ultrasound. It sends sound waves down, it picks up an image, it sends that image back.
In his career, Tim Miller says he's found over 50 bodies in cars using side-scan sonar.
Most times, literally, we can put a diver right down on the body. There he is. There's a picture of him. I know that's a body. Right there's a leg, there's an arm, there's a head.
Miller says that no matter how long someone's been missing, there is hope that a body could still be found underwater.
We have found one after 9.5 years. That was in a container. The skeletal remains were in the container. I was asked to help out with the Michelle Parker case. Family member contacted me, Mark James, attorney in Florida. He contacted me, wanted us down there. And we let him know that we never get involved until law enforcement approves us coming in.
However, Miller says the Orlando Police Department didn't approve his involvement in the search, but wouldn't comment further. And in a shocking twist, 2 years after Michelle's disappearance, police have another key piece of evidence: the last known images of Michelle's Hummer.
In the video, you'll see that the car is not following anybody. No one is following the car. And the glow stickers that made it so prominent are no longer on the vehicle at that time at 8:55 p.m.
It's at a stoplight. It's really seen not too far from where it was recovered by the police a day after her disappearance.
The Hummer was caught on video at 8:55 p.m. on the day she disappeared. That means there was a 5-hour gap from the time she dropped her twins off to the time of this video.
Michelle was not in the car. The sticker was off. Somebody who did something to Michelle was driving that vehicle.
But the most interesting thing about that press conference is that authorities said that there might have been 2 people who were involved in the disappearance.
I firmly believe, after investigating this case for 2 years, that the perpetrator of this crime did not act alone. This was a 2-person situation.
Do they see movement or something in the passenger side mirror that suggests someone is sitting there?
The windows were a very dark tint and you could not see in them.
But the other thing about there being 2 people is that takes this from being some little crime of passion to something that's a lot more coordinated, a lot more calculated, a lot more planned out. So in legal terms, this would certainly turn it to a first-degree murder case if a body were found.
Do you know, was there anybody at Dale Smith's home the day that Michelle dropped her twins off at his house?
If there was, neither I or anybody out of the 7 billion people on the planet are aware of it.
With no signs of an arrest, Michelle Parker's family decides to take matters into their own hands and fight back.
I am in the rage stage. I am angry. How somebody could do this to her and her family and her children. And they think they're going to get away with it. You know what? I'm going to fight. I'm mad. And Michelle deserves this.
Nearly 2 years after her disappearance, Michelle's mom files a wrongful death lawsuit against Dale Smith, the only suspect named in her disappearance.
Michelle is still missing. And I want answers. And this is how we're going to try to get them.
You feel certain that Dale is responsible?
I think he knows. I think he knows.
Orlando police have not provided any details as to why they are calling Dale Smith a suspect in Michelle's disappearance.
The relationship between Dale Smith and Michelle Parker's family has totally fallen apart. And so Michelle's parents, especially her mother, they're dying to see their grandchildren, the twins. But Dale has not let them. That's one of the biggest tragedies involved here.
My daughter is missing. I love her and her children like they're my own. They're my DNA, and they are so important.
Michelle's mother, Yvonne, has been a crusader for grandparents' rights and grandparents' visitation rights.
Those kids are not going to be safe. He has a volatile temper. At some point, he is going to explode again. It's just a matter of time.
That has passed in the state of Florida, largely due to Yvonne's efforts. But she herself has not personally been able to see her grandchildren. And that is a really painful irony.
That, to me, is just absolutely outrageous.
Dale Smith still has custody of the twins. Michelle's family preferred not to comment on the case.
There's so many questions, we don't have answers to them. All we know is that Dale Smith was the primary suspect in her disappearance.
Whatever happened to Michelle is a mystery to all of us. Honestly, we could speculate, but neither Dale nor myself nor anyone who I know, including law enforcement, knows what happened to Michelle.
Dale Smith continues to deny allegations that he had anything to do with Michelle's disappearance.
All these years later, and this is still in the courts, and really still a story about a family that's been torn apart.
The family has said that the worst thing is not having any answers, not knowing what happened to her, really not even knowing if she's alive or dead.
Michelle's mom expressed on the Today Show how hard it's been.
I describe it as being at a funeral every single day. Every hour of every day. And it never goes away. And you can't get away from it. as hard as you try.
They can suspect that she's gone, but they don't know for sure unless a body's found.
November 17th, 2011, I got a phone call from my nephew asking where his mother was. I still don't have that answer. It's very hard, and we have fought, and we have worked, and we have not slept. I just want to say to all of you, thank you so much for all of your prayers, all of your support, for random days just sending us messages to tell us that, hey, you know, I saw a flyer, or I was thinking of your family. It truly does help, and it truly does mean the world to us.
Michelle Parker remains missing. She was last seen driving her black Hummer with the glow sticker. Her Hummer was an H3 model. The license number is AWG M26. Michelle was last seen wearing jeans, a Florida Gators hooded sweatshirt, and a silver cross necklace. If you have any information that could lead to her whereabouts, please call Crime Line at 800-423-TIPS.
Who's knocking on my door?
Timothy is with people who will love and care for him, but you will never find him.
On top of being floored that my sister was gone, was an enormous sense of confusion about where Tim was.
There was a lot of blood in this hotel room.
Please know that there is nothing you could have said or done that would have changed my mind.
Timothy, I love you. I miss you. I just can't wait till you come home.
Just an hour outside of Chicago is Illinois' second largest city, Aurora, recently named the best place to live the American dream.
It was once an industrial town that is trying to reinvent itself in the last few years. It's a very diverse community.
It's an older city, lots of beautiful old homes.
It's a wonderful place to live.
In fact, the house that Jim and Amy purchased was a house that they wanted to redo.
The Pitson family was made up of Timothy, 6 years old, the mother, Amy Fry Pitson, and husband, Timothy's father, Jim Pitson.
Amy was working at a real estate company. Tim was going to elementary school, and Jim was working close by as well. I would say that their life was fairly normal.
The little boy, a popular, happy little kindergartner, and life was good.
Home videos and photos of the Pitson family. They look like your normal all-American family.
I see a really happy child. You can see the true joy of childhood when you look at Timothy Pitson.
Amy was so good at organizing family events, planning trips. She was very good at creating these family experiences.
If you looked at these photos and videos, you'd think they've got a lot of good things going for them.
Jim and Amy met in Iowa. I believe they met at a party and were dating for a period of time. And Amy actually found out she was pregnant while they were dating, which was an unusual circumstance.
Unusual because Jim Pitson thought he was unable to father any children after fighting off a bout of cancer a few years prior.
Amy had never planned on having children. When she discovered that she was pregnant, they both thought of it as kind of, this is meant to be and this is what God wants us to be doing. Amy as a mother was nothing short of amazing, in my opinion. She was kind, she was patient, she absolutely loved being with Tim. They just were like two peas in a pod.
She thought Timothy was one of the best things that ever happened to her life. My name is James Pitson. I'm Timothy Pitson's dad.
6 years into Jim and Amy's marriage, cracks were starting to show.
Jim and Amy had their marital problems. This was her fourth marriage, and they fought like any married couple.
A couple years ago, I found out that she was talking to her ex-husband. I go, you need to stop that. I'm not good with this. And if you could make a decision if it's you want to be with him or you want to be with me and Timothy.
There was some mention of divorce. She was not happy about the prospect of another divorce. That was definitely a worry and concern of hers.
By all accounts, they both really, really cared for Timothy, wanted the best for Timothy.
Amy didn't seem much different than she ever had. Certainly never had any idea of what was on the horizon.
This whole mystery sort of starts on the morning of Wednesday, May 11th. Started out as a bit of an odd day.
The day before, Amy had a bout of vertigo. She was really wobbly and stumbly.
Jim would usually drop Timothy off at school, but on this day, Amy says, no, I'd like to take Timothy to school. Jim, the husband, says, no, you weren't feeling well yesterday. I'm going to take you to work. I'm going to drop Timothy off. I'm going to handle it this morning.
So I let Amy know that, and she was upset. She goes, oh, don't you trust me? I go, yeah, I trust you, but you're really wobbly still from your vertigo attack, and I just want to make sure everybody gets you're safe.
The Pitsons drive to Greenman Elementary School to drop Timothy off for his kindergarten class.
We dropped Timothy out of school, and Timothy goes, love you, Dad. I go, love you, buddy. I'll pick you up later. Then he runs off to his teacher's class. I take Amy up to her work, which was like 3 blocks away from the school. I drop her off, give her a kiss. I watch her buzz into the building, and that's the last time I see her.
30 minutes later, there was a break in the routine when Amy Fry Pitson showed up at the school.
She says there's a family emergency. She says she needs to pull Timothy out of class.
At 8:30 in the morning, a surveillance camera in the lobby of Greenman Elementary School captures Amy Fry Pitson leaving with Timothy.
In the mid-morning, Jim Pitson goes back to pick Timothy up from kindergarten, except Timothy's not there.
I pull up there, and his teacher goes, Mr. Pitson, what are you doing here? I'm like, I get Timothy.
The people from the school tell him, oh no, his mother came and got him.
I buzz into school, and I talk to the lady. I go, my son got checked out this morning. I'd like to see who checked him out of school. It was Amy's signature on the piece of paper.
Because of a quote-unquote family emergency that he doesn't know about.
I call Amy 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times and no answer. I made a bunch more phone calls trying to figure out where she was.
In the afternoon, Jim called me and said, have you heard from Amy?
And he's trying to find some answers. But what he doesn't do on this first day is call the police.
After I talked to Jim, I hung up the phone and called her immediately, and she never answered any of my calls.
But in tracking Amy's movements, there doesn't appear to be a family emergency.
They stopped off at an auto shop to drop off the car. Obviously, it was having some issues.
The car had a lot of miles on it.
There was a shuttle service that took them on to Brookfield Zoo, which is a very, very popular zoo in the Chicago area, and a dream for any little child to go to.
He had been to many times. Tim loved animals.
So they had a fun day at the zoo. They were there from about 10 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon.
That's the last that anybody knew until she picked up the car later that afternoon.
Amy Fry Pitson drives north, roughly 50 miles.
They headed to Gurnee, which is where Key Lime Cove Resort is. It is now called Great Wolf Lodge, where they spent a wonderful evening. It's, again, another child's playground.
So they go from a day at the zoo to a day at the water park, fun-filled day of activities for a 6-year-old boy.
The water park in Gurnee that they went to was a place that Amy had been to with my children as well. None of these things were out of pattern.
Both Amy and Timothy are seen on surveillance video in the Key Lime Cove Resort around 3:50 Wednesday afternoon.
This surveillance video, it just looked like a mother and a son visiting a water park.
70 miles south at the Pitson home in Aurora, Jim Pitson is still frantically trying to locate his wife and missing son.
In the middle of the day, I was a little upset and more mad, and the end of the day was more like, just let me know what's going on, just call me, let me know what's going on.
So he went to bed that night very concerned.
I called the police the next morning before I went to work. I called them and said I would like to report my wife and son missing, and they go, well, is there any reason? I'm like, well, they hasn't been home in 24 hours. They're both gone. They didn't pack any clothing or anything like that.
Around 10:30 on the morning of May 12th, Amy and Timothy check out of the Key Lime Cove Resort and get back in their SUV and drive 170 miles to the Kalahari Resort in the Wisconsin Dells.
The next day, May 12th, they go from one water park to another water park.
According to her financial records, Amy did make 2 stops in between Gurnee and the Dells. One of them was a convenience store where she bought small toys for Timothy, a small craft kit, toothpaste, and some clothing. And then she also stopped at a gas station for drinks right off of I-94.
Mother and son are seen once again on surveillance at 3:40 in the afternoon, checking in to the Kalahari Resort.
This looks like a mother and a son just having a fun time out together.
Jim Pitson repeatedly calls his wife's cell throughout the day, but she never answers the phone.
Now it's Friday the 13th. We actually see surveillance video from about 10 a.m. of Timothy and Amy checking out of the Kalahari Resort.
This video is the last image of Amy Fry Pitson with her 6-year-old son.
How is it possible that he was not with her?
You'd never think that something so terrible would happen to a family like the Pitsons.
Wednesday, May 11th, 2011. A day like any other for the Pitson family, until Amy Fry Pitson checked her 6-year-old son Timothy Pitson out of kindergarten, citing a family emergency. For the next 3 days, Amy embarked on an epic road trip, taking her son to water park after water park, last spotted together on surveillance video at the Kalahari Resort. But Amy and Timothy's road trip is about to take a horrifying detour.
After checking out of the resort, Amy and Timothy head south on I-39. Then they take I-88 and they're heading toward the very small town of Sterling. Around 1:30, she makes 2 phone calls.
Starting to get a little concerned on Friday. But then Friday, early afternoon, Amy called my mom and said, everything's okay, we'll talk to you soon.
She did contact my brother, and my brother called me right away after she got off the phone, and I called right away, didn't get an answer, it went to voicemail.
At this point, there was indications that Timothy was fine. Both the mom and the brother-in-law heard him in the background.
When my brother called me, he said he heard Timothy in the background, and Timothy was hungry like normal. Let's go, Mom, I'm hungry.
One of these phone calls stands out as a little odd. Amy Fry Pitson called her brother-in-law, Jim's brother, and said something like, "Timothy and I will be fine. Timothy is safe."
She said Timothy belongs to me. She was being real possessive over Timothy, and that Timothy was hers and not ours, like ours as a family.
That stood out as kind of an odd statement.
I was a little relieved that somebody had heard from her and that she's okay. I was still concerned about her and Tim.
After 1:30 p.m., Amy and Timothy's trail goes cold until Amy is spotted at 7:25 p.m. that evening of Friday the 13th.
The next time Amy was known to be somewhere was around 7:30 that evening at a dollar store in Winnebago, which is about 50 miles from Sterling. So there's a 6-hour gap between the time she is in Sterling to this time, and she only traveled 50 miles, so that's a lot of time in that short amount of a distance.
At this time, she's by herself. There's no sign of Timothy.
Not long after that, she was at a small grocery store where she bought some Ritz crackers and some milk.
We actually see surveillance video from the same night of Amy now going into a grocery store, except this time Timothy's nowhere to be found. Amy's by herself. So what happened in that 6-hour window? What happened from the time that Amy was making these phone calls to family members to 6 hours later where we're seeing Amy by herself going into this grocery store?
From the grocery store, Amy travels to Rockford to a roadside motel. She is alone.
The day after receiving that reassuring information that Timothy and Amy were fine, early that next afternoon, Jim gets a knock at the door. It's the police department.
We get a knock at the door. 2 police officers come in and they go, "We found Amy deceased in a Rockford motel." And I'm like, "Okay, where's Timothy?" "Oh, we haven't found him yet."
Before taking her own life in a motel room, Amy Fry Pitson left a cryptic clue to her son's location in a suicide note.
They read the note to me. She said Timothy is with someone who loves and will take care of him, and you'll never find him.
What does that mean? What is she saying there? You will never find him because he's with people who will keep his identity a secret for the rest of his life? Or you will never find him because something far more sinister happened?
After the police told me that, I was very shocked, unhappy, and really concerned about Timothy and his well-being and where Timothy was.
I would say that day was probably one of the most devastating of my life. Processing all the information and thinking about how to tell my children that their aunt was gone, had taken her own life, and their cousin Tim was missing.
When Amy's body is discovered and this was ruled a suicide, there were some other things in the room. There was an empty bottle of antihistamines that Amy had taken on the night she died.
There was a large amount of blood everywhere. There was blood in the bathtub itself. There was also splatters of blood on the vanity, the walls, the mirror, the floor itself.
Amy was found on the ground with some really, really serious wounds. We're talking about lacerations to her neck, lacerations to her wrist. They actually found the knife beneath Amy, underneath Amy. She was sort of laying on the knife that she used to take her own life.
When people ask questions over and over, how could this happen? How could a mother take her own life and leave her child behind? I don't think we'll ever get the answers to this. But what we do know is that Amy struggled with depression.
It's certainly something Amy had fought with for most of her adult life. Amy had tried, at least on one other occasion, to end her life. She had certainly been taking antidepressants on and off for most of her adult life.
Amy had her own demons she was dealing with. I told her I'll get custody of Timothy, I'll figure out a way, because of her mental status and her attempts at suicide before.
Several days after Amy's death, her mother receives a suicide note from her daughter in the mail.
Mom, I know you are hurt and frustrated. And I wish I had something better to say than I love you, but I don't. I have tried very hard to fit in, to be happy, to be good to those around me. Tim helped me with that for a while, but everything just fell apart, and this time there were too many pieces for me to pick up again. I can't take the chance of Jim hurting Tim because of my choices, so I've taken him somewhere safe. He will be well cared for, and he says that he loves you. Please know that there is nothing you could have said or done that would have changed my mind. It was just time for me to say goodbye. I love you, Mom. Amy.
Investigators also note several key items not recovered in Amy's motel room.
Other items that were missing from the room were the clothes that Amy had been seen wearing from the Gurney Resort on the surveillance video. Also missing was his Spider-Man backpack, toothpaste, the little cars, the little art kit that she had purchased for him. Her iPass was missing, and her cell phone was missing as well.
Other than the note that was found in the hotel room, the biggest piece of evidence here was Amy's Ford SUV that was found in the parking lot.
There was a concerning amount of blood that we found in the back seat. When that blood was tested, it came back to Timothy. There's no way to tell how long the blood had been in the vehicle.
Despite a concerning amount of Timothy's blood in Amy's SUV, his father doesn't believe Amy would hurt their son.
She would have taken his life in the car. There had been residue of blood everywhere in the car. The blood in the car has been contributed to a bloody nose Timothy had about a year earlier in his car seat. He just had a bloody nose and it was like everywhere.
Without any kind of logical reason to give you, I would tell you 1,000% that Tim is alive. I've never doubted it one iota. It's simply incomprehensible that she would have hurt him.
We also tested the knife in which Amy Fry-Pitson used in the commission of taking her own life. The only blood found on that was Amy's.
But really the biggest evidence that investigators were able to glean from Amy's SUV, material found on her tire treads. The SUV was really dirty, so the Aurora police actually hired an outside forensics lab to really take a fine-tooth comb and look over this SUV.
There was a lot of vegetation, a lot of dust, a lot of dirt on that SUV when it was found in that Rockford Motel parking lot. And they have made some progress in trying to zero in on possibly where Amy was driving. There's a huge timetable we can't account for.
As the evidence recovered from the crime scene leads police to a dead end in their investigation, they turn to see if any electronic clues could point them in the direction of Timothy's whereabouts.
The police have her laptop that she used all the time.
Obviously, they're going to try the digital trail, any kind of digital trail that she left. Her cell phone at this time was missing, but looking into her email accounts, they did find that Amy had a separate Yahoo account, one that her husband was not aware of. Looking into this secret or hidden email, they were also very disappointed when nothing came up from that. There were no leads, no clues, nothing to indicate what she might have done with Timothy.
Looking through her computer kind of was a dead end, led investigators nowhere.
As investigators wait for the forensic test results from her SUV, the focus returns on Amy's last known location, where her cell phone pinged, and relatives could hear Timothy in the background on Friday the 13th, near Sterling, Illinois.
Even though Amy has no contacts in the last area that we know that she and Timothy were in the Sterling, Rock Falls, Dixon area, we did find a couple of unaccounted for trips that the family had no idea what she would have been doing there. These trips occurred on February 18th and on March 20th.
There's a lot of major highways that converge right there, that area, that she could have dropped Timothy off with somebody.
The fact that she had been to that area twice in the past 6 months, according to her iPass, was definitely odd. It's not something that she had told any of us, and There were no friends, family, anything there that would draw Amy to that area other than clearly meeting somebody to put her plan in motion.
Massive ground searches failed to uncover any evidence that would suggest whether Timothy Pitson was dead or alive, or what his mother may have done with him during the 6 hours she was unaccounted for on Friday the 13th.
Every day that goes by, our concern for Timothy is heightened.
With time running out to locate Timothy Pitson, investigators' last hope may be the dirt and weeds found on his mother's SUV.
Well, all these things together showed us that soil from the running board was not from a field. It was actually from the gravel from the side of the road. That's actually one of the things that led to one of our most significant clues.
I did it!
Yeah, can you put them back in?
Amy loved Timothy. Amy would do anything she could for Timothy. Timothy and her were inseparable at times.
They spent the majority of time around each other. Even if they were in one house, they would almost always be in the same room together. They would just gravitate towards each other. If Tim would listen to nobody else in his life when Mom spoke, he was quiet and that was it.
6-year-old Timothy Pitson followed his mom on a 3-day road trip throughout Illinois and Wisconsin. But the unthinkable happens when Amy Fry Pitson's body is found in a roadside motel, and the young boy is nowhere to be found. The only trace of Timothy, a cryptic note that says, "You will never find him."
So that's why this has been such a perplexing mystery to anybody and everybody who knows this story, who's worked on this story, and certainly who knew the family.
I know Timothy's still alive. His mom would never do anything to harm him.
We are really pinning our hopes on the findings of this private forensics lab.
My name is Skip Palaniuk. I'm the senior research microscopist and president of Microtrace. And we were asked to look at the vehicle a couple days after they discovered that Timmy was missing and Mrs. Pitson had committed suicide. There's mud on the back of the vehicle, and there's mud on the running board of the car. But those muds, although they look similar, are quite different in their composition. The material from the running board, it had other kinds of particles in it. There were particles of paint, the kind of paint, the yellow paint with chrome pigment that you would see on road markings on a road. There were particles of asphalt, which we could identify in there. That information helped us to infer that what we were looking at here was not soil from a field or somebody's yard or something like that, but actually from a gravel road.
They also identified pollen from Queen Anne's lace and mustard seed.
We also know that the car actually backed up, so the mud stains on the back of the car where the wheel turned up wet mud, that's actually from a field. Unlike all the fields when you drive out that way that are cornfields, this would be something more like a meadow, and it would have mustard, the Queen Anne's lace.
The results also indicate that the grass was not cut, helping scientists rule out a residential lawn or park. There was also a strong possibility that the SUV had been parked by a pond, stream, or creek in the area.
And when you hear that information, to me, it starts to sound a little scary. Is this the area where Amy could have disposed of her son in some sort of way?
It is likely that a person who's trying to step out of their car, step into the car, lift up the parcel, in this case the child, take him somewhere, walks through the mud, they get that mud on them. They certainly got it on the car, and they got it on the running board. So he was probably taken from that environment of the automobile, the Pitson car, and then walked out somewhere into a field.
It was probably somewhere in Lee or Whiteside counties. But again, we're talking about over 1,000 square miles of area that would need to be searched, which was a daunting task for law enforcement. It was as if no stone was left unturned as they searched this huge area, and still nothing came up that would indicate where Timothy might be.
Aurora police, like the Pitson family, remain hopeful the missing 6-year-old is alive.
If she had hurt Tim, there would be evidence to suggest that.
When I came to the National Center, it was 2013. And at that point, investigators had done a lot of work, and they thought to themselves, if we could only find the cell phone, that would help answer a lot of questions.
In the fall of 2013, police unexpectedly receive a key piece of evidence.
It's just like a miracle. They've been looking for the cell phone, and then poof, out of nowhere, her cell phone appears. They're thinking, okay, this is going to be a gold mine.
Amy's cell phone is found on the side of the road between Mount Carroll and Stockton, Illinois, nearly 50 miles from where police say Amy died by suicide.
This was a huge piece of evidence that had been missing for quite some time. A woman happened to see a cell phone lying along the side of the road. She picked it up, took it home, put it on a shelf, left it there for quite a while until someone she knew needed a cell phone.
Eventually, over time, plugs this phone in, juices it up, turns the battery on, and sees the Pitson name.
And immediately notified police that this important piece of evidence had been found.
But the trail there didn't really lead to anywhere that would help out on the case, where Timothy could have been or who she had been talking to or anything like that.
This is a case where investigators have done everything they could do to find Timothy. They've looked in her computer, they've traced her cell phone records, they've gone out and done different searches. She is not a criminal mastermind. It is unusual that all of a sudden she could just have a child disappear, basically. Is she getting help from somebody else?
How did Amy find these people? Boy, that is the million-dollar question. That is a question that haunts me every day. It is the worst kind of mystery to not have any logical thought as to what she did.
For the first time in 8 years, a shocking break in the case that stunned investigators and gave the Pitson family something they had been longing for: hope.
I got a phone call from the detective saying that they were on their way to Ohio to investigate a lead.
A very short time later, there were news vans all around my mom's house. So I'm texting him, what is going on, what's happening?
Really incredible story that we're about to tell you about right now, because tonight, a possible break in the case of a kidnapped child. Timothy Pitson went missing in 2011. For years, no one has seen or heard from the young man. That all changed today.
We had this child who said he ran away. He said he was kidnapped. And we found it. It looks like back in 2011 he was kidnapped or abducted. The last name is Pitson. First name is Timothy.
It was a young woman who called police. It was in the morning. She was going outside to her car to go to work, and she saw this young boy standing by her car, looking lost and confused.
He went, "Please help me." I asked him what was going on, and he told me he's been kidnapped. He just wanted to go home.
He was complaining of stomach pain. She said he had bruises on his face and looked really lost and scared. He immediately identified himself as Timothy Pitson.
A witness takes a photo of the young man.
In the photo, this boy was wearing a red hoodie and a green jacket.
He had a really big bruise on his face. I was hurt for him.
It's certainly pretty far from where he grew up and very unexpected. You wouldn't have thought that's where he would turn up.
This young person appears out of nowhere saying, "I'm Timothy Pitson, please help me." You can imagine, just imagine getting that call if you're Timothy Pitson's family.
I got a phone call from the detective saying that they were on their way to Ohio to investigate a lead on Timothy. I was excited. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I'm like, I have to buy more groceries, going to have to go shopping for clothing and stuff for Tim.
All of a sudden, we started hearing media reports that Timothy Pitson was possibly found. And I was with my team, and we just looked at each other and stopped, and we all had tears in our eyes to think, is this the day? Like, is this real?
The young man speaks to investigators and describes a horrific tale of survival.
He said he'd escaped 2 kidnappers, that he'd physically walked across a bridge from Ohio into Kentucky. He gave an extremely graphic report of being held at a Red Roof Inn in the Cincinnati area.
He was held captive by a couple of men, bodybuilder types, who had abused him sexually and physically.
2 white males, he said they were bodybuilder types. One was last seen wearing a Mountain Dew shirt, jeans, and black curly hair. They also have tattoos on them. Spider web tattoo on the neck. Second subject was a white male with short brown hair and snake tattoos on both arms.
Immediately, they were making calls to all the area Red Roof Inns to get information and try and match these descriptions. He was able to describe the vehicle they were in, a white, newer model Ford SUV with Wisconsin license plates. Immediately, an investigation was underway for exactly what this boy described.
Wisconsin was the last place Timothy was seen on camera with his mother at the Kalahari Resort in the Wisconsin Dells in 2011.
That piece of detail, those Wisconsin plates, really hit home with a lot of us who thought, wow, this is a legitimate break in the case.
The young man was also able to give several key personal details.
He's giving details and information that the family says only Timothy would know. He knows Timothy's middle name, he knows Timothy's birthday.
But detectives grow skeptical of the young man's answers.
The biggest issue there was that he had no pets. I'm like, yeah, Timothy had his own little cat.
There were a lot of questions, too. I mean, the graphic details about what he explained he went through were hard to hear.
We know from Amy's note that she said he was with people who would care for him and people who would love him, but now this young person is telling the story of being sex trafficked and basically being abused by various people.
He did give them the go-ahead to swab his mouth for DNA samples.
Police did tell us it would take 24 hours to get those results.
That's a long time to wait when you think that this person showing up could be the child you'd been looking for so many years. I sat down around 2 o'clock that afternoon to start writing that story for the next day's paper. And I started the column off by saying, my apologies to Timothy, because I thought you would never be found. And then the situation changed.
The Pitson family has been waiting for 8 long years to see Timothy after he vanished on a road trip with his mother in 2011. But now, that wait may be over.
Out of nowhere, this young person appears on the street and starts telling people, I'm Timothy Pitson, can you please help me?
Refusing to give his fingerprints to police, the young man consents to a DNA test to confirm his identity.
In comparison of that DNA to the DNA of Timothy Pitson's parents indicated that the person in question was not, in fact, Timothy Pitson. My heart goes out to the family of Timothy Pitson. I can only imagine the kind of pain that they have been through.
It was like just the whole nightmare started all over again.
I was really upset, and just all the hope was gone. It was a really depressed time at that time.
I got a text from Jim simply saying it's not him. And that was about one of the worst feelings I'd had since Amy died. All of a sudden, everything that you want and are excited about comes crashing down.
Police dropped this bomb that He's not Timothy Pitson. He's not a 14-year-old. He's a 23-year-old named Brian Reaney. He had seen a TV special in the weeks leading up to this and sort of memorized some of Timothy Pitson's information, birthday, etc.
And 23-year-old Brian Reaney was a convicted felon.
Reaney had just spent a year in prison on vandalism and burglary charges, and he was actually still on parole. He'd just been out a couple of weeks before he impersonated Timothy.
The news was also a shock to Brian Reaney's family.
What would you tell that family in Chicago?
I'd tell the family that I'm sorry for what he's done, but for him, I wouldn't even speak to him.
It's horrible. It's horrible to think about what this family went through in that 24 hours. Imagining, after all of these years, looking for Timothy, and then to hear that he's possibly found, and it to be a huge lie. It's horrible.
None of us, including Jim, have any hard feelings anymore about Brian Reaney. We recognize that this is an individual who needs help, and we hope that he gets the help that he needs, even though what he put us through was very difficult and challenging. At the very least, it got people talking about Tim again.
As the investigation into Timothy's disappearance hits another brick wall, his family makes an emotional appeal to him directly.
We know that you are out there somewhere, Tim.
Nine years ago, a beautiful little kindergarten boy was taken by his mother out of his classroom, and the two of them went on what would have been a dream trip for a little boy. But the story didn't end that way.
What happened in the final moments of their road trip was less like a dream and more like a nightmare for the Pitson family.
It ended in a roadside motel. The mother committed suicide. She left behind a note saying her little boy is safe, but he will never be found.
The first 24 hours is the most important time when a child or anyone is missing. The possibility of the case being solved or him being found is impossible to say.
His mother was the one who created the mystery. They will live with this every day, not knowing where Timothy is.
Timothy, I love you. I miss you. I want us to be together. We have a lot of catching up to do.
Jump for my head. Oh.
I just can't wait till you come home.
It doesn't matter if a child is missing for 6 months, 6 years, 16 years. Missing children come home every day. We've seen these miracles happen. Look closely at Timothy's age progression. We're no longer looking for a 6-year-old child who disappeared. He's a teenager now.
If you think you've seen a child who looks like Timothy, just call the police, call the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. Even if it isn't Timothy, the worst thing you do is not say something and the children or the child is still missing.
Timothy, if you're watching,
wonder if I could bring them to live. I could bring my lover, and baby, you make me wait. Now here I go, going back on the road. Now here I go, going back on the road. Now here I go, going back on the road. Now here I go, going back on the road. With you back there
shorty, if you really wanna go, baby, then you gotta take me the mess. I tried to soak in all the years and take it all in, but I come up for a breath and cry. I gave my drama, gave my simple, gave my friends a helping hand. I bet you know that they are dead. I wish I could tell you this. The more we talk, the talk is not a tongue. The more we talk, the talk is not a tongue. I did not come this far for any stronger. All of a sudden there was nothing left. Well, last night a doctor thought you were lying. I never meant to keep you alive. There might be stuff we said that sound dumb to you, but to get a red wine and take it with a lead, I bet you know that they are dead. I wish I could tell you this. The more we talk, the talk is not a tongue. The more we talk, the talk